Welcome the rare gems. What really happens when a Sigma female gets mad? Is her anger really about the moment that triggered it? Or has something deeper been building underneath for much longer? A Sigma female can experience anger in a way that forces her to examine more than the argument itself. She may start questioning the behavior behind the words, the pattern behind the incident, and even her own choices in the relationship. Instead of reacting blindly, she may become more thoughtful about what the situation is actually revealing. Maybe she has tolerated something for too long. Maybe she kept giving someone explanations that their actions no longer supported. Maybe she trusted a person who slowly showed her that their behavior did not match their promises. And sometimes anger becomes the moment she finally sees the difference. If you consider yourself a Sigma female, understand this. Being angry does not make you weak, dramatic, or less composed. Anger is a human emotion. What matters is whether you allow it to control you or use it to understand yourself better. Your strength may come from your ability to reflect, learn, and make wiser decisions after difficult experiences. You do not have to pretend that nothing hurts. You simply have to become honest about what the pain is teaching you. Stay with us until the end, because we are going deeper into the surprising things that can happen when a Sigma female gets genuinely mad. And when you finish watching, share your thoughts in the comments. Tell us which point connected with you most, and subscribe to join our community for more honest conversations about the Sigma mindset. Number 1. Her anger starts as a private investigation, not an explosion. Before reacting, she mentally reconstructs what happened, what was said, what was conveniently left out, who benefited. Was it genuinely accidental, or was there intention behind it? When something deeply upsets a Sigma female, her first reaction may surprise people. She does not always rush to confront the person or immediately explain how she feels. Instead, she starts putting the pieces together in her own mind. She replays the conversation. She remembers the exact words. She notices the change in someone's tone. She thinks about what happened before the incident and what happened afterward. She is asking herself questions most people would probably never consider. What exactly happened? What was said? What was deliberately left unsaid? Does this behavior make sense when I look at the bigger picture? Was this genuinely a mistake? Or has this person been showing me something I refused to notice? For example, suppose a friend repeatedly cancels plans at the last minute, but suddenly becomes available whenever they need something. The Sigma female may not confront them after the first incident. She watches. Then it happens again and again. Eventually, she may realize that what looked like bad timing was actually a pattern. For example, suppose a friend repeatedly cancels plans at the last minute, but suddenly becomes available whenever they need something. The Sigma female may not confront them after the first incident. She watches. Then it happens again and again. Eventually, she may realize that what looked like bad timing was actually a pattern. That is where her anger becomes different. She is not only angry about what happened today, she is processing everything that the incident has revealed. This is also why telling her, "You are overthinking this," can make things worse. Sometimes she is not overthinking. She is connecting information. There is a difference between creating problems in your head and noticing a pattern that has been sitting in front of you for months. Her private investigation can also protect her from making decisions she will regret. Anger can make anyone say things they cannot take back. By slowing down, she gives herself time to separate emotion from evidence. And there is wisdom in that. Not every offense deserves confrontation. Not every disappointment requires revenge. Sometimes anger is simply information telling you that something needs to be examined. For a Sigma female, the real question is not, how do I get even? It is, what is this situation teaching me about this person, about myself, and about the relationship between us? That question can change everything. Number 2, she stops giving people the benefit of the doubt. A Sigma female can be surprisingly generous with people's explanations until a pattern becomes impossible to ignore. A Sigma female can be surprisingly patient with people's mistakes. She may excuse a forgotten promise, understand a delayed response, or accept an apology without making a big issue out of it. She knows that people have bad days, make poor decisions, and sometimes behave in ways they later regret. So when something goes wrong once, she may genuinely believe there is a reasonable explanation. But anger can change what she does with that generosity. The moment she begins seeing a pattern, she starts separating excuses from reality. Suddenly, the explanation that sounded convincing the first 3 times does not carry the same weight anymore. For example, suppose someone repeatedly promises to help her, then disappears whenever she actually needs them. The first time she may think, maybe they were busy. The second time she may think, perhaps something happened. But after the 5th or 6th time, she may stop focusing on the explanation and start looking at the behavior. And this is where things can become uncomfortable. She may realize that she has been protecting someone's image in her mind more than that person has been protecting the relationship through their actions. That realization can be painful because anger is not always caused by what another person did. Sometimes it comes from recognizing how long you tolerated something because you wanted to believe the best about them. She does not necessarily become cruel. She simply becomes more honest about what she is seeing. There is an important lesson here for anyone who identifies with the Sigma female mindset. Giving people the benefit of the doubt is a beautiful quality, but giving someone unlimited chances is not the same thing as being understanding. Compassion should not require you to repeatedly ignore evidence. People should be judged by patterns, not isolated moments. Anyone can make a mistake. Anyone can have a bad day. But when the same behavior keeps hurting you and the explanation keeps changing, eventually the behavior becomes the explanation. And sometimes the wisest thing anger can teach you is this: you do not have to hate someone to stop making excuses for them. Number 3, she becomes dangerously precise with her words. Anger can remove her desire to make an uncomfortable truth sound comfortable. When a Sigma female is genuinely angry, something interesting can happen. Her desire to make an uncomfortable truth easier for someone else to swallow can disappear. She may stop decorating her message with explanations, soft excuses, and endless attempts to protect another person's feelings. Instead, she gets straight to the point, and that can make her words hit harder than shouting ever could. She may have spent weeks noticing little things that bothered her: a repeated comment, a broken promise, a strange change in behavior, a conversation that never quite made sense. She may have said nothing because she was still trying to understand what she was seeing. Then one day someone pushes too far, and she finally speaks. Instead of saying, "You always treat me badly, and you never care about how I feel," she might calmly say, "You only become considerate when you need something from me." One sentence, no long speech, no dramatic performance, just an observation that is difficult to dismiss because it addresses the actual behavior. That precision can be unsettling because people often prepare themselves to defend against anger. They expect shouting, accusations, or emotional chaos. They are not always prepared for someone who has quietly collected enough information to explain exactly why they are upset. But there is an important lesson here. Being precise does not mean being cruel. There is a difference between telling an uncomfortable truth and deliberately using someone's weakness to hurt them. Anger can give you clarity, but it should never become an excuse for humiliation. The healthiest version of this trait is knowing when to speak, what needs to be said, and when silence is wiser. Sometimes the most powerful sentence is not the harshest one, it is the most accurate one. And if you have ever surprised yourself by becoming unusually clear when you are angry, you may understand this completely. You were not suddenly looking for words. You had probably been collecting them long before you finally decided to speak. Number 4, she starts watching consequences instead of arguments. Rather than obsessing over who won the disagreement, she watches what happens afterward. When a Sigma female is angry, she may eventually lose interest in proving who was right and who was wrong. Arguments can go in circles forever. One person explains, the other person defends themselves, apologies are made, promises are exchanged, and everyone goes home feeling like they have said enough. But what happens next tells a different story. She starts watching. Did the person actually change their behavior? Did they take responsibility without immediately blaming someone else? Did the apology lead to different actions, or was it simply a way to end the uncomfortable conversation? Did the same thing happen again 2 weeks later? This is where her attention moves from promises to evidence. For example, imagine someone repeatedly speaks to her disrespectfully, then apologizes whenever she becomes upset. If nothing changes afterward, the apology eventually loses its meaning. She may stop asking, "Do they feel sorry?" and start asking, "What did they do differently?" That is a much harder question to answer. She may also notice something even more revealing. Sometimes people become extremely affectionate when they sense that they are losing access to you. Suddenly they call more often. They become unusually caring. They make promises they should have made months ago. A Sigma female may not automatically be impressed by the sudden change. She watches whether that behavior survives after the tension disappears. Because anyone can behave well for 3 days when they are afraid of losing someone. Character is revealed when there is nothing immediate to gain. This does not mean she assumes everyone has bad intentions. It means she learns to give actions the same importance as words. And there is wisdom in that. You do not always need another explanation. Sometimes the clearest answer is what happens after the conversation ends. If someone says they respect you, watch how they treat you when they are frustrated. If they say they value the relationship, watch how they behave when there is nothing they need from you. Anger can teach a powerful lesson. Stop measuring people by what they promise during the argument and start measuring them by what they consistently do afterward. Number 5. Her anger can expose how little she actually needs the relationship. Sometimes anger reveals that a relationship had more emotional leverage than it deserved. Sometimes anger reveals something far deeper than frustration. It can expose how much power a relationship was quietly holding over her emotions. A Sigma female may suddenly realize that she was not staying because the relationship was healthy. She was staying because she had become emotionally attached to the idea that she needed that person in her life. Then something changes. She realizes she can miss someone without needing them. She can care deeply about someone without allowing them to control her peace. She can love someone and still decide that repeated disrespect is a price she is no longer willing to pay. That realization can completely change the relationship. Take a simple example. Imagine she has a friend she has known for 10 years. They have shared memories, difficult moments, jokes, secrets, and important parts of their lives. Because of that history, she keeps forgiving behavior that she would never accept from a stranger. Then one day, after yet another disappointment, she stops and asks herself, if we had met today, knowing everything I know now, would I still choose this person? That question can be uncomfortable because history can make unhealthy relationships feel more valuable than they actually are. she may discover that she was protecting the history instead of protecting herself. This is where anger can become strangely clarifying. She starts understanding that attachment does not automatically equal obligation. Loving someone does not mean giving them unlimited access to you. Missing someone does not mean you have to return to the same situation that hurt you. And perhaps the most difficult realization is this: sometimes you do not lose a relationship when you set a boundary. You simply discover what the relationship was built on. If the connection survives honesty, accountability, and mutual respect, it may become stronger. If it collapses the moment you stop accepting poor treatment, then the anger may have revealed something important. The goal is not to become heartless, it is to become honest. A Sigma female can love deeply without abandoning herself in the process. She can appreciate someone's place in her past without allowing that history to dictate her future. Sometimes anger does not destroy attachment. It simply removes the illusion that attachment means dependence. Number 6. Her anger may force her to confront something uncomfortable about herself. Sometimes the person who made her angry is not the entire problem. When a Sigma female becomes genuinely angry, her first thoughts may naturally focus on the other person, what they said, what they did, the promises they broke, the disrespect they showed. And sometimes those feelings are completely justified. But after the emotion settles, another question can appear, and it is often far more difficult to answer. Why did I allow this for so long? That question is uncomfortable because it shifts the focus from blame to understanding. It does not excuse bad behavior, and it does not mean the other person is innocent. It simply means that anger can act like a mirror as much as it acts like an alarm. A Sigma female may realize that she ignored warning signs because she wanted to keep the peace. She may notice that she stayed silent about small problems until they became large ones. Sometimes she expected people to live by standards that existed clearly in her mind, but were never openly discussed. For example, she may believe that loyalty means keeping your word, checking on people during difficult times, and showing consistency. But another person may have a completely different understanding of friendship or commitment. The disappointment can come not only from their behavior, but from the gap between expectation and reality. This is where anger becomes a teacher. It can reveal places where stronger boundaries were needed. It can show where honesty should have happened earlier. It can expose habits such as overgiving, avoiding conflict, or hoping that people will naturally become who we want them to be. Many people think wisdom comes only from success, but some of life's greatest lessons come from disappointment. The Sigma female who reflects after anger often grows stronger, not because she stops trusting people, but because she learns to trust herself more. She becomes better at noticing patterns, speaking up sooner, and recognizing when a situation no longer aligns with her values. There is a quiet strength in this kind of self-awareness, because real growth begins the moment we stop asking only, "What did they do wrong?" and start asking, "What is this experience trying to teach me?" That is when anger stops being just a reaction and becomes a source of wisdom. Number 7. She becomes extremely sensitive to repeated disrespect, not isolated mistakes. She understands that everyone makes mistakes. A Sigma female can understand that people are imperfect. Someone can say the wrong thing, forget something important, lose their temper, or make a poor decision. One mistake does not automatically define someone's character. If there is genuine remorse and a real effort to correct the behavior, she may be willing to move forward. But repetition changes the meaning. The first time she may think, "That was probably a mistake." The second time she may think, "We need to talk about this." After several conversations, however, she may stop focusing on the excuse and start looking at the pattern. Imagine someone repeatedly dismisses her feelings whenever she raises a concern. The first time they may genuinely not understand. She explains herself. They apologize. The next time, the same thing happens. She explains it again. Another apology follows. Eventually, something inside her shifts. She realizes that the problem is no longer a lack of communication. The person understands what bothers her. They simply have not changed what they are doing. That distinction matters. Accountability is not just saying, "I am sorry." It is accepting that your behavior had an effect and making a serious effort not to repeat it. Without that change, an apology can become nothing more than a pause before the same behavior returns. This is why repeated disrespect can affect her differently from an isolated mistake. A mistake says, "Something went wrong." A repeated pattern can say, "Nothing is changing." And when she reaches that conclusion, her anger may become much more serious because she is no longer dealing with one unpleasant moment. She is dealing with evidence. There is also wisdom in recognizing this early. Not every mistake needs a dramatic reaction. People deserve room to learn, but patience should have a limit when there is no accountability attached to it. You can forgive someone and still recognize a pattern. You can understand their reasons without accepting their behavior. You can care about someone while deciding that the same treatment cannot continue. Sometimes the hardest truth is also the simplest. Everyone deserves the chance to make a mistake, but nobody is entitled to repeat the same mistake against you forever. Number 8. She can become quieter while thinking much more intensely. Her silence does not necessarily mean she has nothing to say. When a Sigma female becomes angry, her silence can be misunderstood very easily. Someone may look at her and think, she has nothing to say. But sometimes the opposite is true. She has so much going through her mind that speaking immediately feels pointless. She may be replaying the conversation from beginning to end. What was said? What was the tone? Did the person's explanation match their behavior? Was this genuinely out of character, or has she simply been overlooking the signs for too long? Her mind may be comparing today's incident with things that happened months ago. That is when one small argument can suddenly become much bigger in her mind. Not because she wants to create drama, but because the latest incident may have connected several things that previously seemed unrelated. For example, someone may accuse her of being too sensitive after repeatedly making disrespectful comments. She might not respond immediately. Later, she may remember every previous occasion when the same person dismissed her concerns. Suddenly, she is not thinking about one comment anymore. She is questioning the entire pattern. And this is where her silence becomes meaningful. She may be deciding whether the relationship deserves another conversation, a stronger boundary, more distance, or perhaps a complete change in how she relates to that person. But there is an important distinction. Quiet reflection can be healthy, but endless mental replay can also become exhausting. Thinking carefully does not mean assuming the worst or treating every suspicion as fact. Sometimes people genuinely misunderstand each other. Sometimes an explanation really is innocent. Wisdom comes from knowing the difference. The strongest response to anger is not always immediate action. Sometimes you need enough quiet to separate what you know from what you assume, what happened from what you fear happened, and one bad moment from a genuine pattern. So if you are a Sigma female and you become quiet when something hurts you, do not mistake that silence for weakness. Give yourself the space to think, but eventually let your clarity guide your actions. Because silence can give you perspective, but it is what you do with that perspective that reveals your growth. Number 9. She may forgive the incident, but permanently downgrade the person. Forgiveness does not automatically restore access. One of the biggest misunderstandings about forgiveness is the belief that once you forgive someone, everything has to return to the way it was before. that is not necessarily how a Sigma female sees it. She can genuinely let go of her anger and still decide that something has changed. Maybe she forgives the betrayal. She forgives the disrespect. She accepts the apology. She no longer feels the need to argue about what happened. But that does not mean the person automatically gets the same access to her life. The trust may have changed. For example, imagine she once told someone everything. Her private struggles, family matters, future plans, fears, and personal decisions were all safe with that person. Then she discovers that some of those private conversations were repeated to others. She may forgive them, but the next time they ask, "What is going on in your life?" she might simply smile and say, "Everything is fine." Nothing dramatic happened in that moment, but something important did. The person moved from the inner circle to the outer circle. This is not necessarily punishment. It can simply be a consequence. Trust is built through repeated experiences, and when that trust is damaged, restoring it can take much longer than saying sorry. Words can repair a conversation, but consistent behavior is what repairs confidence. This is why a Sigma female may become less emotionally available to someone without becoming bitter toward them. She can wish them well. She can speak to them respectfully. She can even appreciate the good memories they shared. But she may no longer give them the same responsibility, personal information, or emotional closeness. And honestly, there is wisdom in understanding that forgiveness does not require you to forget what you learned. You can release resentment without reopening the same door. You can accept an apology without pretending nothing happened. You can love someone without giving them unlimited access to you. Sometimes maturity means realizing that not every relationship needs to end completely. Some simply need a different position in your life. You do not have to hate someone to change your distance from them. Sometimes the healthiest form of forgiveness is quietly accepting that the relationship can continue, but it can no longer continue in exactly the same way. Number 10. The most significant moment is not always when she is furious, it is when she is finished caring. Anger still contains emotional investment. Anger can be loud inside the mind because it still means something matters. When a Sigma female is still asking questions, demanding explanations, confronting contradictions, or hoping someone will finally understand what they did wrong, there is still emotional investment. She may be angry because she still believes something could be repaired. That is why the quietest stage can sometimes be the most significant. After enough disappointment, something may change. She stops trying to make the other person understand. She stops waiting for the perfect apology. She stops rehearsing conversations in her head. She no longer needs them to admit that they were wrong before she can move forward. The emotional negotiation is over. For example, imagine she has repeatedly told someone that their behavior hurts her. Each time, they promise to change. Each time, the same behavior returns. In the beginning, she argues because she wants the relationship to work. Later, she becomes frustrated because she still hopes they will understand. But eventually, she may simply stop explaining. The person might even ask, "Why are you not angry anymore?" And the answer may be difficult to hear. She is not necessarily less hurt. She may simply have stopped expecting something different. That distinction matters. Sometimes people mistake emotional exhaustion for peace. They see someone who no longer argues and assume everything is fine. But occasionally, the absence of an argument means the person has already reached a decision internally. This does not mean every quiet person has emotionally detached, and it certainly does not mean anger should automatically lead to ending relationships. Healthy relationships can survive difficult conversations, honest accountability, and genuine change. But when someone repeatedly receives opportunities to repair the damage and chooses not to, there may eventually be nothing left to negotiate. The deepest form of closure is not always receiving the apology you wanted. Sometimes it is realizing that you no longer need it. That is when anger has completed its job. It has shown you what hurt, what mattered, what needed to change, and what you could no longer carry. And when the need for revenge disappears, the need to be understood disappears, and the need for one final explanation disappears, she may finally discover something powerful. She's no longer waiting for someone else to give her permission to move forward. In final words, sometimes anger does not come to destroy you. Sometimes it comes to show you what you can no longer ignore. When a Sigma female gets genuinely angry, the deeper story is rarely about shouting, revenge, or proving who is right. Her anger can become a moment of revelation. It can show her which relationships are built on mutual respect, which patterns she has tolerated for too long, and which parts of herself need stronger boundaries. She may investigate before reacting. She may watch actions instead of promises. She may become quieter while thinking deeply. She may forgive someone without giving them the same place in her life again. And sometimes she may reach the point where she no longer needs an apology because she has already understood the lesson. That is part of what makes the Sigma mindset meaningful. You are not defined by never getting angry. You are defined by what you learn when anger arrives. If you are a Sigma female, do not be ashamed of your depth. Your ability to reflect, question, observe patterns, and turn painful experiences into wisdom can become one of your greatest strengths. But remember, strength also means knowing when to communicate, when to forgive, when to create distance, and when to let something go. Your anger is a feeling. It does not have to become your identity. Use it as information. Learn from it. Grow through it. Then choose your next step with a clear mind and a steady heart. If this video described something you have experienced, share your thoughts in the comments. Tell us which point connected with you most, and subscribe to join our community for more honest conversations about the Sigma mindset. And God bless you.